당은 가서 나선이 점된디기 아니 아들야 안지그 가래 송바래라나 아주 자사 안 동아래 저거자 나 동아 자와기네 메바띵이 대화데 가래람나 네 탈바 넬에세데레스 탈비고 바세다 탐제키미고 바니보디 넬에세데레스 자디 아는 아주 디토바이나 아니 띵이 대화 두고레스 다 지자데 디 넬에세 탈바세디 녀모바 사번 바차 마방바지 녀모바 사번네 제바 방비게 방바디 난 방송바이나 안 탈바세 두고레스 디 탈바레스 디 톱나 아는 아주 띵이 대화 두고레스 다 동아 자기는 녀야 말해야지 다 되네 딜레 하바 아는 녀모바 사번나 바샤단 제바 방비 방송바이나 방바 톱송바이나 아니 넬레 안 탐제킴보고 바세 두고레스 안다 되네 대화네 대화마도 안 동아 자기는 녀야 말해야지 다 디토고 그래지래 다 디토고 인자 안에 디토베알이야 땅 쪽에 톱지게 쪼로 지도하다 톱자 쪼에 된셔야 돼 아주 두셔는지 톱지 쪼어디 디레스 당엘레디레스 제자데 디토베알아 탑람 가리어스나 방자당 방자당 dorja당 랑자다 하고 그래스 달랑 dorja가 매버서 거에 가래스나 동아된 바셔야 되래 아니 디규 군주된 바스레스 진짜 딩이 매바스고 그래야지 나디 매바스네 안 탈바세 토야라 아니 람가를 때네 간스 매바스고 그래 탈바세야 돼 녜레스데 간스 토고 그래라는 람곰발레된 토고 그래 진짜 람곰여도 안 곰발레 때네 아니 동아이 규 군주된 바 아니 군주된 바 녀모바 사본에 제가 번고레스 디방소나 아니 동아요 말했어. 제가 람콤발레 도고레지. 제가 조여들라 밀루시르세데 데니기 한저기 동아세야당 등엘레 토비에게 냠는지기 조디 den시기 남자들이었어. 제가 온도시에 됐어. 송래. 디저 상이 영화들이 람든지비게 도수 냠는지 오래서 람든 나와레스. 데니게 나비게 송데다 밀루와레스. 밀루와레스. 아내가 상아들이 데니시오로한
Good morning. So last night we continued to look at this section on how the realization of emptiness deepens one's refuge and bodhicitta. The Buddha taught us that the state that you all long for, the state that freed of suffering, the state that is where one abides in lasting happiness, he taught us that this is attainable. This is the state of liberation, where one is liberated from suffering and thereby abides in lasting, stable happiness. And this is the state of definite goodness, or liberation. Definite goodness is attained through abandoning the afflictions completely together with all their seeds. This is the attainment of liberation. Lasting, stable happiness, where one's happiness is never punctuated by even a moment of suffering. And moreover, in this context, we can also understand the term definite goodness to refer to the state that is attained when not only the afflictions together with their seeds are completely abandoned, but so too the stains of the afflictions or the imprints of the afflictions, when they are additionally abandoned completely, omniscience is attained. The attainment of definite goodness, understanding with the broader meaning of both liberation and omniscience, this, as we saw in the quotation, is the principal meaning of the teachings of the Buddha, or to translate it differently, the primary objective, the primary goal of the teachings of the Buddha. In order to achieve this state, one has to gather knowledge and integrate that knowledge. In particular, one needs to learn what needs to be adopted and what needs to be abandoned. In other words, what are the wholesome minds that need to be cultivated and what are the unwholesome minds that need to be abandoned. And this we can understand through the presentation of the Four Noble Truths, where true sufferings, these need to be known. Our suffering experiences need to become vividly clear to us. And in dependence on that understanding, we will seek out the origins, the causes of our suffering, where in dependence on what our suffering originates, how our suffering dependently originates. This is true origins. When we've understood true origins well, we can understand that if we can eradicate the origin of our suffering, we will attain a lasting peace, a true cessation. So then we look to how to do so. And this is to cultivate the paths within us, true paths, mental paths, in order, so this is the training into true paths. And now to look at it in a reverse sequence, when one cultivates true paths, one eradicates true origins, and thereby true sufferings, and abides in a state of true cessation. When one comes to recognize this, one realizes that the Buddha Shakyamuni, who taught from his own experience, that experience was faultless. Therefore, he is a valid being. And not only, and therefore, his teachings are unerring or faultless or incontrovertible. So this then, in brief, is what we looked at last night.
That's on Yigi, the Nigi, and the Ngele, the Ngele, Tobjeki, Taplamdiki, Temba, Tembu Sundi, the Tsema Yimbadi, Doyodu, the Nigi Sunken Sanye Koron, Sanye Jumden, that Temba Tsemare, Gibu Tsemare, said, and the Tsema Yimba Hakugore, go to Gorejere.
What we looked at last night links into what we looked at in the final session in the previous weekend, which is where when one comes to recognize that the method to attain definite goodness is valid, it's unmistaken, we then can understand that the teacher himself, Buddha Shakyamuni, is a valid being.
Ngele to tap tempigi and sung di temari to us, miluari to temari to us. Dina shin da sangi shindu go yu be sung dia, temari miluares, Berna the denshi ngejun da, and the ngele da, and the tap tempigi milua imbadi, chibar was a chir se gimses word that Tamboda, Joy de la Milu chir like the chirlapna, chirlana carse, di res, say. Sanji and Shindu Kogyu Sungbi Sungdia Miluares, Pena Garasene, Denje, Nele, Dangele, Toyaga Tabla Jeba, Dembi, Sundi Milua Redwas, Chibares, or that. You may be serious, Gimsaro di Sungro. Jeza, Dandala Garsona, Sanji, Shindu Kogyu Sungbi, Shindu Kogyu Lungla in a Dohores, Jezada. Egypt lungla den dohores. Tisanda sanji shindu go beach lungdi lung chemares, Pena noa yomares, Daba Suma Najan Dagara to la Niguores. Imbi Pena neta de Denshi Temba, the Nele Tembu Sundi, Dagara to la Nigua Sumba, Milua Redoas, and the Gimsanchi Bares, that Dondaningbo the Garson, Sanji Shindu go you soon be lungdi lung chemares, and Pena Denshi Temba. Ngejun da di tab tembe denji tembe sun chema yi red was and on gimse pe ti question sun warta.
Continuing to look at the quotation that we looked at last night, because of being unerring with regard to the principal meaning or the primary objective, it can be inferred with regard to others. The primary objective or the principal meaning, when one comes to recognize through valid cognition that this is attainable, one recognizes that the teacher of this unmistaken path is a valid being, and that is the meaning of the first word in the sentence, because. So because shows, the word because shows there's a reason. Because of being unerring with regard to the principal meaning, so here what's implied is, therefore, the teacher of the unerring, the person who taught based on his own experience, teachings which are faultless or unerring, is a valid being. So here one comes to recognize with a valid cognizer that the teachings of the Buddha are unmistaken or unerring, and therefore so too is the Buddha. He is a reliable being, a valid being. Then into the second line of the quotation. Now with this stable conviction in the teacher and his teachings, the sutra teachings, which has come about in dependence on recognizing that definite goodness, or liberation and omniscience, are attainable through the cultivation of the path, the method that has been presented. One has come to recognize that the category of phenomena that are slightly hidden, as how the Buddha presented, that category of phenomena is unerring and he's reliable. So too then, with regard to the category of phenomena that are extremely hidden. So there's this threefold division of phenomena into the manifest and the hidden. And the hidden is also divided into the slightly hidden, what can be realized inferentially, and the extremely hidden. So the Buddha now we have recognized is unerring in relation to the category of slightly hidden, and therefore it can be inferred with regard to others, the category of phenomena that is extremely hidden.
That didn't much idea that Lovaria the Pavali, Uma Shikibanalma, Sonja Betsik Matangua, she had a Pavali, Shikabale, Sangi Gisun Gokurla, Gashi Tesum Giguruba, Ni Dongba Ni Dende, Dini Konar Ichijas.
Continuing in the text, we come to a quotation from Arideva's 400 verses. Just before I read it, translations are just a little bit too literal. I'm going to swap the order of the first and second line and just add a couple of words to make it clearer, but the meaning is the same. So read from the second line, the first line, third and fourth. For whomever doubts may arise with regard to what the Buddha has said about the hidden should depend upon emptiness and gain conviction solely in him. So read it again. For whomever doubts may arise with regard to what the Buddha has said about the hidden should depend upon emptiness and gain conviction solely in him. So the translation that's on the Atisha website has been updated. So if one downloads that, all the changes are there already.
Jina Tsema said, the Mungan Jidang Tsema said, and then Mosumi Tsema that you superbet Tsema, Tsema Dini Madobe Marwa, Jidane. To Tseme was to Tsema, the Lola, which Tsema Sheba, Tsema said there, and then Mosum Tsema that you superbet Tsema and Yisungorwa.
When we talk about the category of consciousness that is a valid cognizer or valid cognition, generally we talk about two divisions, that of direct valid cognizers and inferential valid cognizers.
And Tsema said, Tsiki by Tsema in the Yudik Dela, and the Shiro Chagor, depending on Mosumi Tsema said, Jesu Pape Tsema said, Lung Kibu Tsema said, Lung Tsema said, Tsema, that Kibu Denigi. Mosumi Tsema, Jesu Pape Tsema, and Lung Tsema, Kasa Kibu Tsema, Lung Tsema, and Ondushin Tsema Hiro Shigurwa.
Valid cognizers, whilst usually divided into two, in that way can also be divided into four, with the same initial two, direct valid cognitions and inferential valid cognizers, as well as then valid cognitions with regard to a being, a being being valid, as well as valid cognition with regard to scripture being valid.
Nada Manzuki Delia Dragi Pa June Tema Share Delici Ores, Jidan Tema de Lungosum Tema, the Jesuba Tema Ingures, and then Dinaja that Pa Dragi Pa June Tema said like, and the Digan never get to give Tema Lung Tema Nijor. I give Tema the Lung Tema Nidi, Tema Revesne, and Tema Marella or this done.
So that being said, the way to let's bring some deeper clarity here. There are two types of valid cognizers, direct and inferential. When it's presented that there is a third and fourth type, valid cognition with regard to a being valid, valid cognition with regard to scripture or the teachings of the Buddha, the sutras being valid, those two additional categories of valid cognition are not actually valid cognizers, but are merely labeled, merely called valid cognizers. So therefore, the two types of valid cognitions are direct valid cognizers and inferential valid cognizers. But the consciousnesses which recognize a being as being a valid cognizer, or the scriptures being valid, or scriptures being valid, those two consciousnesses are also labeled or called valid cognizers.
Zanda kasi ngosum tsema labdi ngosum di yudi chinda to ba na shin yudi donda la yoba inza ngosum tsema le gro jeba tsema su de jeba di yudi to ba na shin donda la to ba na don le ne ba inza jeba tsema la gro tsema se de to ngosum tsema la di ngosum di tsema di yudi to ba na shin yudi donda la yoba inza ko tsema le gro ma donda le men lo she de se gro tsema le现在제바 세야디가 유디파 제바 지나 유디 또 용도 또 바나신 돈을 여바인자 그 참아서 시그로 와 이제다 참아드네 지나신다 상이 송세電子 电笔 송디 상이 송디 电笔 수바 나신 돈다라 돈지 电笔 돈을 내바인자 상이 롱들이야 롱 참아서 민다고 김제디 참아라고 그래서 송바 나신 죄샤디 돈다라 돈을 여바인자 롱 참아래시 다 기부 참아세디 상계 기부 참아 상계기 그래서네 덴바시 고롱기 또바나 가서래 덴바시디 아는 것도 또 바인자 또 바나신 돈을 덴바시디 여바자 네 기부 참아래 해야지 중국어로 기부 참아다가 롱 참아라고 하디 그래서네 롱디기 죄자 덴바나신 돈달라 그런 돈기 죄자도 여바자 롱 참아 기부 참아셔도 그런 거 대신 내로 지다와 좀 또반 체명해 봐 인자 하는 거라 기부 참아래 해야지.
With the actual classification of valid cognition into direct and inferential, these consciousnesses are suitable to be called direct valid cognizers because they realize the object in accordance with how it exists. So therefore, if an object is realized directly or inferentially, these consciousnesses that are realizing the object are not wrong consciousnesses because they realize the object in accordance with how it exists. Then this term valid, which is in relation to the teachings of the Buddha, here maybe a better translation would be authoritative rather than valid, but it's the same word. So here one realizes that the teachings on the Four Noble Truths are authoritative because they too exist in the way that they're taught, that they exist in the way they're taught. Their meaning is in accordance with, the meaning is authoritative. So therefore the word valid is used to apply to the teachings of the Buddha, and likewise to the Buddha himself as being a valid being or an authoritative being. And this is because he is the being who taught the Four Noble Truths from his own experience. So therefore, having taught authoritative teachings or valid teachings, he is an authoritative being or a valid being. Whereas the two types of cognizers or consciousnesses, which are suitable to be called valid cognitions, are just the two, direct and inferential.
Dini yuji doba nashin, dona dagara yu dunle nebati, nena nganazu kibu tsema chagiri besine, chabi ngeba yo maresi, kibu tsema sayadi. Chisa nganazu le kibu tsema rebe, karasa nganazu ki, anijiki, jalada, dini ki doba nashin dunla, ani nganazu kangpa doba dangla kangpa yore, anijiki, dini duwasinde, kibu tsema rebe sine, nizam kibu tsema la yo maresi. Kibu tsema say, ngoyo sunyade, kawani ngoyo sunyade, Denshi Niluk, Seme Onsum Dosawi, Domana, Gibu Sema, Denshi Niluk, Dembashi Nilute, and Onsum Dopi, Gansa Digila, Gibu Semala, was Dembashi Onsum Dobana, Doba de la Gibu Semas, Chisada Papi Gansa Chasan Gibu Semacharu, Papi, Gibu Sema in the Papi Gansa in Gugorda. Anzucata, Nyandu in another, Ranja in another, Janju Semba in that, Sanyi Diso, Judgment, Diso, Papi Gansa, the Chasan, the Gibu Semala Shachu, and Gibu Sema, the Season Sadi, Denshi Nilu, and then Monsum Doma Dola Shago, Monsum Dobe Gansa in the Gibu Sema said. The Anzucata, Tema, Monsum said, Denshi Kowale Judo Chiaki, or Kowale Tayada, Tangele Toyaki, Tablamdi, and then Delia, Monsum Doba. Gansa Tikela Gibu Semas. Jesada Konzugi, that Denigi Dinshinelu Nejundang, Tarba Toya, Nele, Tarbata, Tarvik, the Tamjiki Toyagi, Tablam Kons, Mosum Doba, Yamu Yobaza, Shanle Demba Inayang, Noada, Machuada, Manoada, Machubada, and Chasan Tintugorwada. The Nigi that was a motto and Chicket, Dada Chili to me. Then Gangela Dundala and the Gibu Sema said, Dinshin Nilu Mosum no Tope, Pape Gansa Tikela, that Chasana Gibu Sema for it.
So as the translator in this section, I'm going to use the word valid and authoritative as synonymous, because it will hopefully make it a little clearer what the meaning here. So we as ourselves do not become authoritative beings merely due to generating direct valid cognizers, because we have many direct valid cognizers. We directly realize manifest objects. So we directly realize many manifest objects. That doesn't make us an authoritative being. Why is that? Because an authoritative being is someone who has directly realized the situation, the presentation of the Four Noble Truths. That is someone suitable to be called an authoritative being. So therefore, as we've had presented here, an authoritative being is Buddha Shakyamuni. But in fact, all Arya beings are authoritative beings. And this is because all Arya beings have come to realize directly the presentation on the Four Noble Truths. Therefore, they have an unerring or faultless realization of the Four Noble Truths, and their presentation, their teaching on it, their guidance about how to attain the Four Noble Truths is also faultless and unmistaken. So here, Arya beings so all Arya beings are suitable to be called authoritative beings. So Arya beings, whether they are solitary realizer Arya beings or Hira Arya beings, Bodhisattva Arya beings, whether they are Hinayana or Thevadan foe destroyers or Buddhas. These are all Arya beings. And they are Arya beings because they all have directly realized the presentation on the Four Noble Truths. And then just to add one additional thing, this word Arya is the Sanskrit word that in English is translated as noble. So we always say the Four Noble Truths. They could also be translated then as the Four Arya Truths, because they are true for Arya beings, for noble beings.
And then the Papa Lai Son Yai di Nang Kasan Suma the Doro She. That 가상은 저先来接受爸爸因是的过去上一生过去的一起给带来的都会送入啊，先来接受吧。先来接受爸爸因是的看的这个先来接受爸爸因开上送下的。先来接受爸爸是的开始送过是呢，上一有送去被新都过去的也那一起弄来的都会送入啊。其实这来先来接触爸爸是新都过去现在送我说没要嘛了，他这来呀，他爸爸送来的上一寄送过去了，是的过去了现在新都过去了时候的上一有送别，其实上一寄送拿了呀，那我就是忙不电源了，就是要过去忙不电源了，但是那电把那这上岸就我就这个样子多突不突啊？那就是过去的样子接把来打来点多突过来是。其实到新都过去被语言高啊蒙被我来也有的看这个的新都过去对于往给新都过去我也才有往给新都过去我对的我差吧我才有往给新都过去对语言被都给新都过去的那个生意说吧这个看来很难是别的这个大车的越南面呢，上边的那个商业寄送过去了，是就是商业就送不过去，是的那个鱼过去就不送去吧，这些刚系提什么计划就是，这上商业送些不过去的那个那水了，这干的是越南面呢，这大越南面呢，上边个干的是越南上边提什么用过来这里。你好的。
In the quotation we looked at last night, the second line was, it can be inferred with regard to others. Now coming to the translation from Aryadeva's 400 verses, this follows on. So this quotation then, looking just at the first two lines, for whomever doubts may arise with regard to what the Buddha has taught about the hidden. So all phenomena can be divided into three. Those objects which are manifestly evident, those which are hidden, and that can only be realized through inference, and those which are hidden, those which are slightly hidden, and those which are extremely hidden. And extremely hidden are objects that cannot be known by non-Buddhas. So here we can talk, the objects which are extremely hidden is what is meant by this term hidden. So the Tibetan just uses the abbreviated hidden, but of the two types, slightly hidden and extremely hidden, it refers to extremely hidden. Slightly hidden would be what we see in the third line, that of emptiness. So, in order, objects which are extremely hidden, the Buddha taught about those in his scriptures, in his sutras. Now having come to recognize that the Buddha is an authoritative or valid being and his sutras are authoritative or valid too, when doubts arise about them, we can dispel them through what we have come to realize thus far about the Buddha and his teachings, being an authoritative being. So let's give some illustrations of what would be objects which are extremely hidden, that the Buddha has taught, but we cannot come to realize their validity for ourselves. So these would refer to objects that are from a distant time, from eons and eons ago, or about the essence or entity of objects that, again, from eons ago. These are beyond the capacity of non-Buddhas to realize, but can only be understood through the scriptural teachings of the Buddha. So therefore, doubts for ourselves will arise towards the existence of these objects and the validity of the teachings, and perhaps even the teacher himself, because we cannot come to recognize them or realize them for ourselves.
뭐 직대내기 뒤 유링비 봐도 쳐봐대라 아니 신도 고교 해야 돼 지난 신도 고교 상계라 최근에 신내 고교 말봐 뭐그 상기 무슨 또도 고교 책교 말해 다 장주 선바 나 되네 장주 선바 사 토벌 내생래 나 공원들에 고교 여러 가서 상이 송 ben sangi and it's in Zebati near Chamoti Chasa, and then Domatuba Chashin Sanwigi, Chashin Chawadi, and then Shindu Gogu Chagurwa. Then young Jiki Dushine, then Janju Sembala Shindu Gogu Mayane, Yang Jing Yanduda, Rangela Shindu Gogu again. Then Lamna Shugan Gaza Digile Shindu Gogu, when you can let Shindu Gogu, and Arantulia Shindu Gogu in it. It's not that Shindu Gogu said, Gaza did until a dune Shindu Gogu Shahua Chavadua.
What's included in the category of extremely hidden phenomena are those that existed or occurred an extensive period of time ago, and what the entity of such phenomena would be. So these are extremely hidden phenomena, but they're not extremely hidden for all beings, because for a Buddha who has perfectly or completely eradicated all faults and thereby perfected all qualities, all phenomena are manifest. So phenomena are divided into three: manifest, slightly hidden, extremely hidden. For the Buddha, every object that exists is manifest. But for non-Buddhas, there are objects which are extremely hidden. Even for Arya Bodhisattvas or Arya Bodhisattvas on the pure grounds, even for them, there are extremely hidden phenomena that are only only known by or realized by Buddhas. Certainly, then, if that's the case for Arya Bodhisattvas, including those on the pure grounds, it's the case for Hira and solitary realizer Aryas, for all beings on the ordinary paths of accumulation and preparation, and certainly for us. And as one progresses through these levels of beings, there are not only extremely hidden phenomena, but also slightly hidden phenomena.
다가라 이시체야마도 만줄이야 김세 제바 제신의 하고 돼 매완자 데니기 뒤기 온기 신도 고교 돼서 빼로 되리체 다지 뭐 차이 온기 신도 고교라도 빼네 아주게 데니급라 아주 둔데라 하여래요 말해람나 아주래 하고 뭐 신도 차완자 내가 또 요래랍 돼야 매되대 제사데 아주 신도 고교 차대로 와 제가 디네 자다 안주 되나 대신도 그 뭐요 차요 온게 신도 고교 뒤 다른 거 온게 신도 고교 나 아직 데네게 뒤태는 맞아 충충충충 시위지 뭐 데네 충충인자 데네게 뒤태 가는 시어를 데네시에서는 랍토에 매바로 당하서 데네시 빼로지 데네 신도 고교로지 데네 용고를 받아
For ordinary beings like ourselves, if we're asked to recall something from the past, we have some difficulty. If we're asked to recall, for example, our previous rebirth, where we were born, what life form we're in, we have no idea. We may have a theory, we may have an idea, but the reasons upon which such an idea would be based are hardly reliable. So for us, our rebirth previous to this one is extremely hidden. But that our rebirth previous to this one, so just one lifetime back, will be known to those who have developed clairvoyance and the particular capacity to observe past lives. They may well know our previous life one previous to this. And for Buddha, the expanse of time, because all phenomena are manifest for a Buddha, all our previous lives will be known to a Buddha. Another illustration would be if someone were to ask, are there gods present right now in this Gompa whilst we're teaching? We don't know. We cannot say with any certainty, and we have no valid reasons to say with certainty that they are or they are not. But again, so for us, that is an illustration of an extremely hidden phenomena. But for those with developed mental faculties, they would know. And so too with the tiniest of particles. For us, these are extremely hidden. But for others, though, these are known.
And in our Bendigo to give Taring Bund the Shinaki do Shinaki may measure down to Yabana, Tangan part to do Shinaki, good Taring Bund that you may have a Tumara, the Shina now may have a Nanzo Kokyo Shadow. Penny Metan and Michior, Shinaki Metan and Michior, Korong made in one from Tungo Ben Bisno, Middle was Monjura. When you read the Nanzola, Kokyo Shadow, do Penny you Taringbo. 다른 부 원기 나한테 꼭교 샤데 이나 그런 편이 메땅한 미코롱 원주래 이나 꼭교 메디 꼭교를 병원주래라나 원주래 꼭교 말해 이나다 나한테 가르 원주를 꼭교래서는 나한테 꼭교래다 딱 나한테 간다 하고 그랬으면 내내 아주 누워를 준비했나 다 누워두신 누워디 유비 김선의 전에 어다 편이 매요래 새벽에다 누워 유비 김선의 때에 메디 여바 하고 그래마도 메디 옷음도 두고 말아. 대장 아주 메디 지당 걸 꼭교 많이 내야 유 다른 부 원경 나서로 꼭교 차치고래. 지다다 하지겨. 그러서 낭 편지 통고할 때뭐 참고 있냐. 그러서 걸라 하고 꼭교 말했대. 이나 나서로 꼭교 차려와. 디나시 다 다른 부 쇼우네 개왕 동자 진열이야. 데니기 나서게 개와디 디 내가 비호란 깨월랜데 샘젠디게라 꼭교 말아와 운주를 거치시 통고라 이나다다 나서 때는 신도 꼭교 차려와 진짜 나서 디니게 되네 신도 꼭교 차려마도 자위게 요동자 지기냐 니스미라 나가는 시월에서는 소수기다 가리나 깨월랜데 시월와다 미제 샘제 나dwindo에 나미나 대단 코너 디깨월랜데게 가서 코너들로 가서 운주로 코너서 무슨 통고라 하고 그거와 꼭교 말아와. 진짜 당 안은 졸라 신도 꼭교 차대로 봐다. 진짜 지난 데니기 깨왕함에 깨와 동다지니게 샘젠데 신도 꼭교 레벨라네 말해. 공원주래. 그런 디 가사되길 원숨 또도. 진짜 안은 졸라 원주 레벨에서 말해. 꼭교 레벨에서는 꼭교래. 꼭교 나네 주세 꼭교세도 말해. 신도 꼭교세들이 해야지. 어두시네 삼단에 어두시네 신도 꼭교 차야 되는데 중국으로.
If someone is having, for example, is making a fire, maybe they're burning leaves outside their home. For that person, they're making the fire is perceived before them, it is a manifest phenomenon. For us, though, maybe a few blocks away or several houses away, for us, it's a hidden phenomenon. We have no idea whether they are burning leaves in their garden or not. However, should we see smoke arising from their garden, we will then, in dependence on that reason, we will be able to infer that there is a fire at that property. So therefore, this hidden phenomenon for us can become known, in dependence on a reason. So therefore, a slightly hidden phenomenon. Because of seeing the smoke, we know there is a fire. Similarly, whether their gods are present or not in this around us, this is for us. This is hidden too. But if there are several gods, they know they're here. So for each other, the presence of the varying gods are manifest objects. Similarly, something that happened many lifetimes ago, thousands of years ago, for us is extremely hidden. But for the beings who are present at that time, those events were all manifest.
아들이야 직타마들에 뒤도와 데니 코나 이지샤 아세데 직타마 직가시 타마들 제사다 상이 예순시비 직당보디 상이 예순기비 신도 고규 되게 다 상이 이시비 룽러 때네 이시기 침에 또 우리 에서 타마디소 데니 이시 코나 자스 이체비 참말에 된 도고레스 이치 룽기 아니 룽기 이치 룽라 때네 아니 이체비 참마 도고레스 다 가서 주변에 지발에 가서 이치 룽라 제바수미다 그 룽제 디삼다제 안 디토네 이치 룽라 때네 아니 능해봐 이치 녀고 참마 도고레스 세데 딩이 코나 이치자세 되수고요 당보들 상기 기송 고규바스 상기 송비 송규 최지 고규되게 간스 도고래라나 모습이 또두고 말해 아니 가소래 모두 제바 또두고 말해 다 가르도 그래서는 딩이 코나 이치자세데 이체비 룰라되는 도고래 사실 디송고래 다 직당보다 다만이 되시 송요
And the verse concludes, should depend upon emptiness and gain conviction solely in him.
기마디 시규르다 동의세다 시규르다 내 가르쳐 바래라나 직둠대 전에 랍샤르 당보 타마다 딩이데 당보기 좀 지바 지부셔다 상예기는 고송와 동반이 시규르 해지 단다 시규르 제라 다디데 직당보들 상예 고도 규베 송규 신도 고규 템바디 안 된도아디 안에 가능세스네 태좀 개와이나 제사디 데디 모두기 치매 모습이 또 두고 말해 모두기 제바 또 두고 말해 아니 가서 또 그래라는 이시 룽카나래 되는 또 알아야지 타마딜라 데니 아니 데니 코나 이시자 이슨 거래.
So a very straightforward way that we can understand these last two lines is if we ever so slightly change the translation. Should depend upon scripture, or let's say authoritative scripture, and gain conviction solely in him. So here, this is therefore is entirely in accordance with what has been presented thus far, that independence on having come to recognize that the teachings of the Buddha are authoritative, one can then have conviction in those teachings that they are reliable, especially here in relation to what is, as we have in the first line, hidden, referring to the extremely hidden. So therefore, whilst this extremely hidden, we cannot realize with a direct perception because the object is not manifest for us, with the direct perception because the object is not manifest for us, we can accept them as valid, the existence of such things, in dependence on having recognized that the teacher and his teachings are valid or authoritative.
지사 동반이 때 동반이라 때네서라 그래서는 상기기 더더더드나 베네직 둠되고라 라시나 상기기 라신 주비 동반이 땜비기 흉디 아니 룽체마리도 와 땜바나시도라니 참마차기도 와 디나시 신도고기 땜비기 알룽디한 참마레스 아디 도나디스 모레 밀로아레스.
So one has in the presentation come to recognize that the teacher and his teachings are flawless or unerring, and therefore are valid or authoritative. And therefore, one is also thereby can have confidence in the slightly hidden presentations too on emptiness, that one can rely on the Buddha's scriptural presentation or teachings on emptiness, because he taught them on the basis of his own unmistaken experience, his own direct experience.
나데네 다데데 도르드네 슈네 티셰 다덴 되산 지게 삼당나로 망와 시셰베나 제산다 태좀네 기여도디 간에 신다스메 태좀 기여도 될라 제바지 용을 해제 태좀 될라 태좀 기여도 제바지기로 와 나디간에 제바지 제산 데니게 숑을야 제바지도 아니 주게 상이 송바 나신 다가라 차기도 민도선 제바지 바지도 다신 제베체나 tengyula nyame dongsa chimo de yigo maro jisa dashan jebe china pa dashan jebe chen je yong de kala ane di 디 동바 니텐데 세데 당보 신도 고기 때 신도 상이 신도 고기 때 간다스나스베 태좀게 어디 되네 디 견전에 안바 유래 제바지고 그래지래 제바지네 바 제바지네 유바 제바지도 도 다신见这样的概念没有东山西都그래东山西都그래지 동바이都그래지 디 동니 세 동바이都그래지 제가 상기기 수공고도 규배송에 담보 태좀기 그래서 간에서 태좀기 용어래라 태좀기 어디다 안 가르치 거라서는 다하랑 누에 민두선 제바제를 고주용을 해. 제바지도 다신 집에서나 파제용도 안 가르치 갈리리 가야 많이 봐 동산 얘기를 해서 동반이 또 그래서 그래. 제가 네 동이 세트 동반이 세트 동반이 또 그래서
That then is an explanation on this verse that is quite easy to understand. A further way that one can also understand this is we know that the Buddha encourages us to think for ourselves. And when something is taught, we should investigate for ourselves whether this is the case or not. And so certainly this will be the case in terms of phenomena which are extremely hidden. Doubts will arise, but in any instance doubt arises. When doubt arises, one should investigate. So when investigating an extremely hidden phenomenon, to see does it exist in the way that it was taught or not? What would Prasangikas say will be the outcome of such an investigation? It does not exist in the way that it appears, and one comes to realize emptiness.
동반이 또 딘딘디선 델라딘에 안에 가르쳐 버렸으나 안데 신도 고교 성비 롱디 아니 이치적으로 해서 이치별도 그래서 돼. 지나다 동반이 딘디 동반이 또도 안에 가르쳐고서는 가르하고서는 상기기 최탐제 란신이 마주바리 따던 제외에서는 예요 말해서 송바디 오늘은 된바래샤 지사 상기기 동반이 가서 따던 제외에서는 가야만 요 동상도 또 봐인자 또도 상기기 최탐제 란신이 마주바리 따전 제외에서는 예요 말해 동상에서 송예디다 딘비 동반이 딘비 롱디 참말래샤 지사 디 송바 나신 제바 심주체도 안 동사지마도 안 라시도 자와긴 이기 민와 선배기다 동방이 땜비 룽디 참마인바디 곧 하고 두고로 제사다 다 상기기 데니기 숨바델라 추와 노와 메반자 델라 데네 안 상기기 신도 고교 손샤바데야 안 이치기 룽 대야 안 참마레 사지 룽 참마레 사지 어두스는 고도 고고래제래
So to continue this deeper explanation of this verse. So in dependence on coming to recognize that how the Buddha taught that phenomena exist in reality is authoritative, is valid, that all the way phenomena appear is not how they exist in reality, that all phenomena, despite appearing to exist by way of their own essence, are empty of existing by way of their own essence. There is nothing that is self-existent or exists by way of its own nature, that these scriptures are valid, are correct. In dependence on seeing that the scriptures on emptiness are authoritative. So or to express that last bit differently, in dependence on recognizing that the scriptures on slightly hidden phenomena, emptiness, are authoritative, one can then gain conviction too that the scriptures or the presentations on extremely hidden phenomena, these too are authoritative, are reliable.
안젤레 다디링 데소야디 가르스나 상기기 신도고교 숨비교 숭바나시 안던라 니기레스 숭바네 던라 요레스 베나 다디 벨야 가르송스 동방이 템바나시 던라 동방이 니기와스네 디링 동방이 벨야 샤샤가라 가상슈에디 반den추기 답게 가르송스네 상기기 신도고교 숭바디 숭바나시 던라 니기레스 가르스는 산이기 디벨이야 산이기 대시 그 톱가 소리 뇌중 가서 뇌레 톱적이 탑조 대신이로 땜바디 다가란 얘기도 와 스페디나 지바레스는 가서 빼셔야 돼 대신을 빼셔야 송하네 빼셔야 디링 빼셔야 돼 동방이래 빼셔야 송하네 딩이마도 된다 다니 지바 제거래 가사다 디링이래.
What we looked at yesterday and today is very similar. We're looking at the teachings of the Buddhas, the scriptures of the Buddha, to see whether they are authoritative or not. But where the difference is the technique being used. So what was presented last night and last week was that through the technique of seeing that definite goodness is possible, that liberation or omniscience are possible through the cultivation of the method that is presented, one can recognize that the teachings of the Buddha and the Buddha himself are both authoritative or valid. Here, now in the verse we're looking at from Adhyadeva, through reflecting on emptiness and recognizing that phenomena do not exist in the way that they appear. They are empty of any form of self-existence. And therefore, the Buddha's scriptures are authoritative or valid, as too, therefore, is the Buddha himself. Here, through the technique of emptiness, we come, the technique of emptiness, understanding reality, we come to recognize that the Buddha and his teachings are authoritative. So it's a different technique, whereas before, the technique was through definite emergence, definite goodness. Here it is through reflecting on emptiness. But one comes to the same conclusion, that the Buddha and his teachings are authoritative.
다 산이기 아니 신도 고교 송에 셔야지 송주 신도 고교도 또야 되는 가서 또 그래 쓰는다 또야를 봐 신도 고교 송셔 비게 된다 신도 고교도 또야라 아니 가서 간스 또 그래라네 다이 시기 룽체말된 또 그래서 다 룽체마지 제바 숨이다 베기 제바 숨이다 비 룽라되는 또 그래서 진짜 디니 제바 숨이다 베기 룽라되는 또 그래서 가상 제바 숨이 가상 시지바 제바 숨이 되 비롱라 딩이 요코나 이치자 시데 딩이 신도 고교데 간스도 그래라나 제바 숨이 되비 이시 룽코나래 되는 또 그래 해서지 나도 셴 또도 말해 해서
So again, phenomena divided into three: the manifest, the slightly hidden, and extremely hidden. So the extremely hidden, the only way that we can, non-Buddhists can come to realize such phenomena is to rely on scripture, on the teachings of the Buddha. In order to recognize that the scriptures are authoritative and therefore the teachings of the scripture are authoritative, we come to that point through either or both of these techniques, through seeing the validity of the presentation on definite goodness or the validity of the presentation on reality, on emptiness. And in this way, we give rise to belief or conviction in scriptures. Yes, or last night we spoke about that this is established through seeing that scriptures are purified by the three kinds of analysis. And within that, we're seeing that the scriptures that are authoritative are not refuted by other scripture, nor by inference, or nor by inference. So therefore, through this technique, we come to recognize that the scriptures, which present extremely hidden phenomena, can be relied on. And we get to this point through seeing the validity of either the presentations on definite goodness or on emptiness.
나도나라 책디 dumdeore 고고데보라 쳬베나 상기 신도 고교 송디 신도 고교 수베 송디 룽디 밀루아레베 밀루아마레람나 밀루아레스 실라보라 다 페나 상기 동이 템비기 룽디 밀루아레도아스 동이 템비기 상이게 동반이 땜비 룽디 밀로아레도아스 아니 디나신 상이 신도 고교 땜비 룽디 밀로아레스 다디셰 다나 다 상이게 신도 고교 땜비 룽디 밀로아 있나 안 신도 고교 대가는 또 그래라나 20이 룽라데는 또 그래스 전 20이 제박이 때는 또한 마도 무슨 또 두고 말해 아니 모두 제박 또 두고 말해 20 룽코나라데는 또 그래서 안 디링 소야 디디송 거래 제가 사기 순비 신도 고교기 땜비 신도 슝 룽디 밀로아레베 가르레라나 밀로아레스 대별야 가르고 거스네 데네 밀로아 이데스 안별야 동방이 땜비기 슝디 밀로아레도아스 아니 지바레 사제 단단히 니바데라 데나네 사이 신도 고기데 간스 또고레라나 아니 무슨 또그르베스나 디또토고 말해 주제 고기 또토고 또토고 말해 모두 제바 또토고 말해 20을 룽코나레든 또고레 사제 송고다 don다디레
I mean, two key points made made thus far. Firstly, is that the only way that we can come, that all non-Buddhists can come to realize phenomena that are extremely hidden, is through relying on sutras, and to gain a conviction that in the sutras which are reliable is done through these two techniques of either seeing the validity of a definite goodness, or that of the presentations on emptiness, where one sees that those sutras are unmistaken, and therefore one can rely on them in relation to phenomena that we cannot come to realize ourselves. In other words, the sutras which present slightly hidden phenomena, seeing that they are reliable, we can infer that the sutras on extremely hidden phenomena are reliable. That's then the first point. And the second point, which closely relates, is that the method, the technique to realize extremely hidden phenomena is only by relying on authoritative scriptures, because we cannot realize the validity of what is taught in those sutras directly or inferentially, but only in dependence on relying on authoritative scriptures.
가상 먼저 데 소야디 denshil 파자 디 덴버시 나네 뇽모바세야 아니 군중 덴비 조 뇽모바디 가사랑 유튜브 수수비 짐발 파자 시셔와 가사랑 유튜브 제사디 가사 라게드비 제수도 동비 다음에 버터비 공발에 되네 아니 코발을 저투가 같이 송마르와 다디린 동반인데 장 시르와다 제사 대행사다 안주 녜레게 토베기 규다 denshigin denpashinane ngele thoyagi jide dunga dimbi gyuzo de kunju temba kunju dimbi gyuzo de karasin dense marik padires dense marik padini ligores jizan dense marik padi pangbala nyembo 동방이 되게 싫어 겁니 빠나 마도 셴바 통 말해스 제가 되는 인상 다 녜레 토비하기 녜레 탈바다 탐지 김표 고반이 탐지 탈비 고반 토바이네야 동이도 불로 공발에 되네 dense 마리고 빵고 그래 다 dense 바샤다 제바 빵바데나 동이도 비셔라 공발에 되네 빵고 그래 제가 되는 인상 녜레 토야다 탈바다 탐지 김표 고반 통엘레 탈비 고반 토발라야 동방이 되불로 공발에 되는 토고 그래 지나다 탐지 김표 고반 토발라 동이 되불로 공발에 되는 토고고요 반자 다 동이 되네 토고래 세지 다 되니 다딩에 다디나서야지 녜레다 녜레기 톱지게 탑 den시 덴바시시에 디딤 덴바시 나네 다 군주 덴비 조디 아니 규군주 덴보 조디 dense 마릭 바제 디 년보 람딘 고미야 람디야 람나네 탑나 시럽이 나네 람 탑 시럽디 동방이 또 비셔라 공발했던 토고고래서 디 인자 땡규블루라 동방이 마도바이네 녀모모 빵 통매바자 제디 디 동방이 된데서 동방이 송고가도 김전디래다 가상디 뇌대바다 심 투모셔서 동방이 가서 그래 라신이 말을 동방이 또 호고 말 강사 다음에 참모 또 발을 때네 녀모 빵 토고를 권한소에 디
Last night we spoke about the Four Noble Truths, or the Four Arya Truths. that one needs to come to know true sufferings and the origins of sufferings, upon which suffering dependently originates. And thereby, when one recognizes the root cause of suffering, one can attain cessation from suffering, liberation, by cultivating the path and developing the direct antidotes to the origin of suffering. It was mentioned last night that many tenet holders accept that the method to attain liberation is through realizing that the self is empty of being self-sufficient, substantially existent. And it's that realization of selflessness that leads to liberation. Here, in this verse from Aryadeva, explicitly the term emptiness is used. So the presentation is very similar, with one key difference, that in terms of true origins, the root cause, the primary origin upon which suffering arises, is not that the self is grasped at as being self-sufficient, substantially existent, but rather that it's grasped as existing truly. And that ignorance of true grasping is the root cause of all suffering. And that being the root cause can only be eradicated through the cultivation of the paths. And according to Prasangika, they would say that there are the paths of method and the paths of wisdom that need to be cultivated. And the path of wisdom is not, the path of wisdom that needs to be cultivated is not recognizing that the self is empty of being self-sufficiently, substantially existent. That is coarse. But rather that the self is empty of being truly existent. Therefore, emptiness of true existence needs to be realized in order to achieve either liberation or omniscience. Because as Prasangika will assert, that it's a wisdom realizing emptiness, it solely is the direct antidote to their afflictions and their seeds, as well as being the sole antidote to the afflictions, their seeds, and their imprints. Therefore, a practitioner, no matter their goal, whether liberation or to give rise to the omniscient consciousness of a Buddha, needs to realize the emptiness of true existence. And thereby, they can eradicate either the afflictions together with their seeds and attain liberation, or the afflictions together with their seeds and imprints, and attain omniscience.
아지엘레 당은 가사다 디린이게 나로 직바 제거래 나라 가르스네 상이기 송시비게 den신대로 땜바당 아니 신도 고교 땜비기 롱당 동방이 땜비 롱차사 아니 롱차마레스 제가 롱차마엔자 니나데 땜바 나시 련라 네네 반서 롱차마레스 대송주도 다 상예이 데니기 안줄야 탑람 땜바디 탑람 마노와 땜마노와다 아주 코비 동아를 줘야다 탈바다 얘라 탈바다 탐제 김비 람 땜바디다 마노와레스 제가 상이 송어데 마노와레스 제가 상이 송디 마노와다 체단 땜바 임바징 아주 체명해봐 니여도 데네 상이기 대송한 상이 코로야 다 마노와데 체메기 보래 세지 하고 돼야 돼 제가 데네 기여도 then kiyo kabla ana sangi gi sungdang an sangi ya labar do de jige shene deba to ba se sangi gi sungbi gi donda de ngui ne so cheme nge ba nye ne nye yo de an de ya yishi ge ya da ana sangi gi de ne gi sangi de ya an sungwo kansa de ya da jig koron ge nyamnyong to ne sungwi ba de ne gi mano sungwa de hago de da cheme gi bu re se de cheme gi bu ba ga so do to go ba cheme gi bu ba to so ba na 되는게 난 대바께도 신의 대바토바에 해서 다디 대바디 도도 매바 도도야 말해서 미생기 니수간에 주변에 대바디 매바 잘 말해지고다.
I hope then that what we looked at last night and today, it's clear that they are very similar, but that there are certain differences which can be understood, but they come back to serving the same purpose, what we looked at last night and today, which is through either of these two techniques of either seeing the validity in the presentation on definite goodness or the validity of the presentation on emptiness, that one comes to recognize that the teachings of the Buddha are authoritative or valid, as therefore is the teacher of those teachings, the Buddha himself, as an authoritative or valid being. And the purpose of this is primarily that we give rise to an unmistakable confidence in the method or the technique taught by the Buddha in order to achieve definite goodness, liberation, or omniscience. Through recognizing that this method is free of any fault, is unmistaken, is unerring. Seeing it as unerring is essential for us to have the strength of mind to commit to ensuring that we keep our mind in accordance with the Dhamma at all times. Moreover, the quality of faith that we now give rise to is profound. It's a faith based on knowledge. It cannot, and this is it's a faith that is, it's a faith we cannot be turned away from. For example, if we meet a charismatic teacher and so forth, our faith will not be swayed, because we have come to see the teachings of the Buddha as authoritative and the Buddha himself as authoritative, and our confidence in the method is unwavering. So therefore, we give rise to a powerful, transformative, stable level of faith, a faith based on knowledge. This faith from knowledge, or the faith that arises from knowledge, is extremely important to generate, because one will never turn away from such a faith, which means should one either meet a teacher who is a false teacher, whose teachings are contrary or not in accordance with the Buddha, we will not be influenced by that. We will not be turned away from the authoritative teachings of the Buddha, because of the quality of faith that has arisen, this faith from knowledge. And therefore, when we hear teachings, no matter the skill of the orator, and recognize that they are not in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha, we will not be adversely influenced by them, but we will recognize them as being mistaken.
dunga dire se dene shele dunga lagire se ngoche che da dunga yu dene re zawi ge dunga yu dire se de pa ngoche na mare chizada dunga de le joba ina ngele se thugure di thoye ge tablam de ma zo lam nyamne je bale de gom gore se san yu sun jo pe ma singan zo ya ane chik san ye gi ma zo dunga se da ting yi de thoye gi ane ngoche che da di tablam cha san den ba de pe ma se 야고 슈시레샤 셈비게다 상이 베마 생한줄야 게진 첨부 슈레샤 셈베 상이 게진 제야다 디양의 상이기 된 지게 파 안주게리아 안제요 원게 송바 제와 아주 동아다 자나 셈비 안줄레 제와 제와다 아주 심제 템제 대화데 되나 셈비게 심제를 미비게 안 잠바든 제요 원게 안 송바레 실제 상이 된 안줄야 베마세 게진 첨부다 지게 판도 좀 휴슈레샤 셈비게 상이 대바 상이 게진 지수 잼비게 대바 고미아레 대바 고미아디 아주 두스체네 상이 게진 잠니지 공비게 상이게다 연전다 아는 아줄야 드나데 상이 게진 첨보레 셈비게다 아주 상이랴 두스체네 게진 지수 잼비고네 대바제야데 차고로와
It's always my objective to try and present the teachings, not just in a way that gives you knowledge and understanding, so in a theoretical manner, but to hopefully make it clear how these teachings can impact on one's life, transform our experience of the teachings, transform us, who we are. So how do these teachings that we looked at last night and tonight, can they experientially impact us? This, hopefully here, as what has come across, is the need to look continuously at true sufferings, at how ordinary beings suffer continuously, not just on the coarser level, but the subtlest of levels, because its independence on or in relation to the strength that we come to recognize suffering, we will thereby give rise to a corresponding determination to actually identify the origins of suffering. And I'm confident if I were to ask you what the origins of suffering are, each and every one of you would give me a correct answer. But this needs to not just be known intellectually, it needs to be known experientially, which comes about in dependence on the gathering knowledge and the integration of that knowledge through continuous reflection. And in terms of dependent relativity, in relation to the strength of our understanding of the root cause of suffering, we'll recognize that it being an ignorance, if it were to be eradicated, to be severed, liberation would be attained, freedom from suffering would be attained. And independence, or relative to that understanding, we will give rise to a determination to come to know the path, to lead to liberation, and to cultivate those paths within ourselves. Moreover, independence, or relative to these varying understandings or realizations, our relationship to the Buddha and his teachings will be transformed. The sincerity, the depth of our appreciation for the Buddha will be transformed. And this is of paramount importance for many reasons, one of which I've just mentioned, that one's faith will be unshakable. But moreover, with a conviction in the teachings of the Buddha, knowing that liberation is possible, it will be comparatively easy to apply ourselves to cultivating those teachings in our mind continuously, striving for liberation, knowing that it is possible. I can do it, and I can do it, and there's no need for delay. Any procrastination would dissipate. Moreover, knowing that liberation is possible for ourselves, and that we only have come to recognize this independence on the kindness of the Buddha, independence on the being that became a Buddha, actually having done so, and thereby, due to his immeasurable, incomparable compassion, teaching us the method, we know that we can achieve freedom. And we can do this, we can achieve freedom, independent on the compassion, the kindness of the Buddha. Not only can we achieve liberation, from suffering, but so too can each and every sentient being. What is required is each and every sentient being to be guided in the same way that we have. And therefore, we have a responsibility to become Buddhas ourselves, so to assist in guiding beings to their own enlightenment. So in this way, going through this reflection and generating unshakable faith in the Buddha, not only will that lead to a determination to strive for liberation, but it will also, or can also, lead to a determination to become a Buddha for the sake of others, to generate bodhicitta.
Dine sanji ki jamba dan sewi ki yunden te anda sanji ki ane je dine ki nga ju kijin jembe du shi na samta da dine niba de la kar samtang go resne da nga ju ki dan dine sanji ki dine sun shebi ki khurge dunga tha da le ji ja je nge bar ngele se de tobudu sanbingi tobar je ki sanji sumba na de ya jingi tobar ngele se de khurge dunga de le de 자고도 선배 삼다야다 딜레는 제비기 아니 겔세데 마토다 탑민도 토고도 선배게 당아서 뒤바게야디 난 토바지기 선배 삼다 나디 공고로 당아서 된데 양 삼다야디 차고로 와디 니바디.
In brief, then, the two benefits that come through this is to develop this unshakable trust and conviction in the qualities and kindness of the Buddha and his teachings, and moreover, recognizing that definite goodness, whether liberation or omniscience, is possible for me. And not only the mere acceptance in the theory of the possibility, but an overwhelming aspiration will arise within one to strive with determination to achieve such a goal.
데네기 다 냠는 지긴 선비게 삼당에도 다 데네기 숨바들이야 즉 데네기 지게 이 냠는 제발라 다 나주기 제스카브렐라 어당아 강아 체리지 지지 용말의 선비 삼롤 용시 바로와 제사 겔레 토야리아 깔레 같이 겹나 여기 니림 고갑배 야고를 했다 디는 디나시 고갑라 하고 시우레다 데네 자다데 냠는 제알이야 나는 지게 튕긴 차사 소식이 리딩이 전에나 튕긴 차되어래 지에는 제 상의기 송다 되내기 계획 신이 돈에나 튕긴 차되어서 디린 고갑지 빼고라서 깔래 가지 겹네 여기 있다 진짜 소비게 아주이네 출랑했으면 쉬어봤어도 취기 냠는 제발이야 강아 가지 나디 강아 마셈 받징이 지긴 선배 섬다는 출랑했으면 쉬어봐 쉬어봐 차고로 와 제가 디닉 지긴 선배 디닉이 삼다디 차고로 와다 출랑에 숨지 세바 동화 달링이 세바서 동화 세바숨이라 동화 달링에 세바 아니 가서래 예 어디
We know from our own experience that when we do apply ourselves to the Dharma, trying to cultivate the meaning of the teachings within ourselves in order to achieve our spiritual goals, such as liberation or enlightenment, we do encounter obstacles. And those obstacles, all too often, overwhelm us, hinder our spiritual development. But through reflecting well, we can overcome all obstacles. Because meeting or encountering obstacles in the cultivation of paths in our continuum is to be expected. They are not, what is not to be expected is that they will disappear on their own. Rather, we transform our mind by appreciating what we can achieve, what is not beyond us, that is achievable. And therefore, when we encounter an obstacle, we will not see it as insurmountable, but rather as something that can be transformed or overcome. We'll recognize thereby how fortunate we now are, because what previously hindered us, we now can overcome. And we do so through the recognition that the principal meaning of the Dharma is achievable for us right now. Therefore, all these obstacles and problems that we experience, they are nothing compared to what we can achieve. And in this way, obstacles in the cultivation of the path do not overcome us. They do not overwhelm us. And this then is where we become skillful in the third type of patience, the patience in relation to obstacles when practicing the Dharma.
아니 저기 다 디링 가사다지 소야기 다 죽도 신앙하는 저기 냠낸 돌려야 수수자래디 디산데네 삼다이로 베네디로 치르도 베나가 총으로 신에 직미 총 개바디 향설랍제 총디네디네 자월 캡산데네 시어라 시에도 캡산데 여바디 통도 오다디 캡산디 배워라 디라고도 선비기 담보 캡산디 이 돈이 dumbaki다 디레알야 탑람 총제데 탑람 두수 시고 총제기 자 베스 소미오로 다 베스제데 갈레도 서로와다 지금 가브리엘라 바시아 몽고 바시아 세고 뭐 제사 디네자 데야 아다 디린 고갑 야고데 디 고갑만 갈레 같이 겸당이 잡긴 디 캡사 두비에도 나 제긴 선비게 다도 무티네 제가도 도나 두고와 베디나시르와 베디나시랑 저는 사이 손지 뱅엘레 사 디통 디 캡사디 통 멜레 통 데니 멜레게 토베게 탑론 템바데 베즈치기 셈베게 듬바기에도 토고즈 듬바기나 디 토베게 베즈를 주고레스 디 베즈를 주어도 다 데니 무티지 준주고라 준주 당한 무티다 안随便냠는 고고에 거데 당한 저기 안디자디 드링이 샤이데 디로 당한 저 냠는 가르쳐베네 준주에서 당随便냠는 샤디 인지미지 고해지르도 와데지 메나 나저게 되스지는 바 지금 도시는 다다의 주투마도 바쳐거라 지나 디링기 아주 가사데 디르소야 되도 나 님봉하는 소리야 직 소수기 삼나리아 도 삼다에 디니쇼를 라바르 되디르 쉬베나.
The method or technique that is presented here in order to give rise to an aspiration, a determination to achieve the meaning of the Dharma, definite goodness, is something that in your own lives you'll have experienced many occasions, whether it's in business or your education or anything that you look to achieve. One engages in a process of gathering knowledge and using your wisdom, your intelligence, to analyze that knowledge, to see whether something is possible, whether it's achievable, and whether achieving it is worthwhile. So let's just take as an illustration that of business. If one is looking at a particular endeavor and thinking, will such a business be profitable? And if so, is it achievable? This is the process that you would have gone through in many aspects of your life. You want to achieve something, you want to see, is it achievable? Is it worthwhile, worth my effort? And then, if you see that it is, you apply yourself. And not only do you apply yourself with sufficient strength of mind, but you deal with the obstacles in achieving your goal, because such goals, the attainment of such goals, include overcoming obstacles and requiring vigor and effort. Here then, taking that and applying it to what we've looked at here, we understand that firstly, through coming to recognize that the goals of the Dharma, definite goodness, liberation or omniscience, that these are what we long for, the state of lasting happiness, and that it is achievable through the method that is presented, the method of the Dharma, the method path and the wisdom path, to the extent that we give rise to the aspiration or determination to achieve these goals, seeing them as both worthwhile and achievable. The key skills that are required for achieving any goal, patience and joyous perseverance, will arise. Just like in your walks of life, in order to achieve your own life goals, one requires patience with obstacles. One requires joyous perseverance. So too, when realizing the enormity of the goal or the great benefit of the goal that we're striving for, joy arises, as well as the strength of mind, the vigor to persevere through at all times, no matter what one encounters. And in addition to joyous perseverance, when one does encounter hardships, the mind of patience can readily be applied. The mind of patience, which is the mind that stays undisturbed in the face of adversity, the mind that is not overwhelmed by adversity. So in this way, these two indispensable characteristics of the Dharma, successful Dharma practitioner, patience and joyous perseverance, arise.
And Sosurangi, the nature Batella, Sosurangi, Sosuranalia, Jesuiracia, Sosurangi, the nature, Bearesha, Tisha, then Tarbada, Tamji Kimbi Dundala, and the Tobjet, the Tarbada, Tamji Kimbi Gopale, Toyale, Dile Habach Mevare, Di Dundala, Nikalek, Nagalekazana, Galek, the Tihidu Bear already was and big. That did need Geshe and because Sosugi Jeba Delia, Yamlin Jebal, Jesuiran Jebana, and also Sim Jumba, the Mayoba, Simbedia, and Boval Masonia, Dumbalia, Nubaya, Chertayala, Pingore. Jenna and the Galedo, Jina Galedo, somebody Sim Jumba Chayongore. Jenna Dini Jumba Chaban and it got me to Velia and the Barshigorwa. Jenna Dineza, Nanzuli, Sosugi. Gewala, Jesuiran, I think he teaches about bear, which you should teach us and big. Dinija, the new in the jet to the bear, who was and big, Dinish somebody, Sosurangi, Sosurangi, La Chicasure, Durba, Dunga, Sevenata, Boko, Boba, Jesuiran, Jebena, and Sosuki, giving Yamlin, Javalia, Ya, and Petroyada, and the Boba, Chertoyada, and the Chikisim Majumbo Yagi, Cavayungores.
There are many obstacles or reasons behind why it is difficult to cultivate paths in our paths within us, including knowledge and integration of that knowledge. But so too is a negative attitude, an attitude of mind that keeps us smaller, weaker than we are. When reflecting well, giving rise to joyous perseverance and patience, and endeavoring in our practices or our mental transformation with these companions of joyous perseverance and patience, this has a transformative effect on us as we start to overcome our inner hesitation, seeing it as not having any valid foundation at all. Because all too often, we recognize that we are so easily overcome by mundane pleasures and mundane problems. And later we recognize that all that time and energy into things that have no lasting value was a waste of our energy, but yet we make those same mistakes. Here, as we start to apply ourselves ever more and with more success, our mind we start to see hardships and hardships in a new light. We start to recognize that we have the capacity to overcome these. Whatever the obstacles are that we encounter, whether they are our own afflictions, whether they are external to us, we come to recognize that these do not need to overwhelm us. In this way, we start to give rise to a deep inner confidence. And this is accompanied by our mind naturally relaxing and becoming peaceful and calm, recognizing that these obstacles, we experience them mentally and we can overcome them. And in this way, we no longer become so troubled by emotional upheavals or suffering, realizing that we can effortlessly move through them. They do not need to overwhelm us. And in this way, a major obstacle to our spiritual development is overcome.
Rangi Kewala Chiso Iran Cheba, Shana Iran Chitu Chuba, Nikewaya Wara said, Sungdua Chehore said. Din Hashin Jerum Chine, Gewala Chisu Iran Chewar, Dikewana, Bay Yahuares, Chisar Shenyi, Kevigi, Sangmutu Vatilia, Bay Yakure, Sempege, Jesu Iran Cheven, Sosuline, Kewati, 토부리에서 그 지행기 제반에 제가 소수의 개와 제샤바들라 롱에마 제바이나 가상한 제바나 디린 쇼가 제바 능한 주에 딩에지 디지배야 우충시 배야 오래 선배기 지수이라 제반 제수의 야구의 선배는 저기 디 칼라이네 야구의 선배는 디사일 야네야도 사이게 되어지고래但지금 매도 동라치나 야구도 선배는 델레 야네야도 줘야기 탑시 지고로 봐 야구 민도 삼네 될 사지 존의 줘야기 되어지고 마 디나시 나중에 제바데 개외지 야구의 선배는 야네야도 제기 되어지고래 제가 듬버피고 제가 현기 제발에 제수 일하지도 콘주배 야고래 삼바이나 소소이네 현기 제바나진 제해기 되바 듬벌이야데 될야 제해고 고급제 용으로 다 소소 라랑게 제샤바데 니니 냠네 제배 야고래 삼바이나 니니기 제해기 남가데 야네야도 제해기 다 듬벌이고래 제가 니네자 제수 일하 제바데 마세 기침벌에서 오래
What I'm presenting here is the practice that you'll know from many of the sadhanas or practices that you engage in, which is the practice of rejoicing in virtue. So whether it's you do the 35 Buddhist practice or others, very often there's reference to rejoicing. And rejoicing in virtue, the virtue that you've accumulated, that others have accumulated. Rejoicing is an incredibly skillful way to transform our mind and thereby overcome problems. And therefore, Lama Tsongkhapa encourages his students to make a conscious effort to rejoice in virtue. Rejoice in the virtue that is being accumulated right now, that was accumulated yesterday, that has been accumulated throughout this life, as well as the virtue that we have accumulated in past lives. Recognize this, rejoice in it, and not just what we have accumulated, that others have too. The purpose of doing this is, as I presented in the previous segment, to challenge and overcome this sense of this is beyond me, this is too difficult. To recognize that really is not the case. We are capable of so much more than we recognize. And the purpose of generating a joyful mind, the purpose of taking delight in our training, is because it is so much easier to apply ourselves to something that we enjoy. For example, if before you now were your favorite food, something you find absolutely delicious, you'd have no difficulty eating it. You'd readily reach out and enjoy it. In fact, if you couldn't, because it's impolite in front of others, you couldn't eat it right now, your mind would be so distracted, it would be on that all the time. Why? Because you take delight in it. Your mind is joyful about it. This is what we're wanting to, that attitude is what we're wanting to apply to the Dharma, to helping others. Recognizing that the goal that we heard about in theory is actually something that's achievable, and it's achievable by ourselves. And we can make great strides towards attaining it in what remains of this life. This is essential to have this sense of joy about engaging in the Dharma, because all too often one may have the attitude that I know I need to turn away from particular ways of thinking or particular activities, but not take delight in doing so, but see it almost as a loss to do so. But if one is delighting in virtue, then it's very easy to turn away from what hinders us. Even if we take mundane pleasure in it, recognizing though that it restricts us, and we can achieve something far greater, we can readily turn away from what actually harms us in the long term, without any sense of loss. So therefore, rejoicing is of crucial importance. So thank you. Then we can conclude here for this morning. But should you have some questions, then please feel free to ask. Cameron?
Yeah, just in relation to has anyone else got a question?
Did you forget?
I'm trying to find it, that's all. The extremely hidden. Is it correct that in relation to the extremely hidden, we don't actually have faith based on knowledge, but like simple faith, because it's a thing that we can't fully understand. So therefore, our faith is simple rather than faith based on knowledge.
So with regard to objects which are extremely hidden, assuming we have faith in them, is that just a simple faith rather than a faith based on knowledge?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
이치기 대바로죠. 이치비 대바로죠. 이치비. 이게 맞은 건 줄래. 이치비 대바로죠.
Yes, so to use the terminology, the faith that we have in extremely hidden phenomena would be a faith of conviction or trust, rather than a faith arising from yiche gi depa. So the faith of conviction or the faith of trust, that's what we would have now, as opposed to the unshakable faith, which is the faith arising from knowledge, from understanding, knowledge or understanding or knowing. Yeah. So what we have is the faith of trust or conviction, as opposed to what we look for, we look to develop, is the faith arising from knowledge or understanding. Okay. So in answer to the question, brief, yes, you're correct, and I was just using the actual terminology. So your question was correct, yeah. Andy?
That reminded me of a question I wanted to ask about exactly the same thing, but you gave the example of molecules are extremely hidden. But actually, if you had a microscope, you could then come to know them and see them. But that's not to do with faith that they're there. That's just the fact that at this moment you can't see them, surely. It's like the kangaroo outside that you can't see. That's not extremely hidden. You just don't know it. So I can't see why the molecule example is an example of extremely hidden.
So I can't see why the example of a molecule being extremely hidden, or why a molecule is an example of being extremely hidden, because it can become known.
Not through faith, but through actually.
Yeah, not through faith, but
it.
yeah, but through seeing it. Okay, yeah.
안줄에 탑시 매등에 다들 경험을 나눠서 두신 두신 매니 점블링 스타지인데 두신 디치 요르베스네 띵한수 신두고 샤들와 지나디 탑실에 띠네 통도견들의 신두고 말했어 통나 미 말했어 디 내가 불러 되니게 탑시가 매등에 되니까 불러 양한줄 기스티벤 신두고 그래서 대바 지부를 말해 나 신도 고교세 도야디 산예기 룽 제바 숨게 대비 룽 될라더니 이체비 지식이 이체는 또 그래서 막 대바 지부져야 또 소야 말이지 이체비 룽질라 된 또 그래서 룽질 이체비 룽질라 되네 룽디양 룽인바지 지금 말해 제바 숨게 대비 룽디 되는 시는 또 그래서
For ourselves, the molecules or these tiny phenomena are extremely hidden. We cannot perceive them. But they can become known to us through, as you say, utilizing technology such as a microscope. So therefore, something that is extremely hidden can become known, can be directly perceived through relying on something other than faith. Faith is not required to come to know extremely hidden phenomena. In relation to the extremely hidden phenomena that are explained in the sutras, these require faith to come to know, and at the moment the faith that we have is the faith arising from trust, the faith of trust or conviction. And in this way, we have we accept these extremely hidden phenomena based on the sutras they are taught. But we also need to come to know which sutras are suitable to rely on, literally, such as, and to do so is through utilizing the method of the three kinds of analysis. And in this way, we can have a faith of trust or conviction in the appropriate sutras. Okay?
Sorry, just to go further. But this thing about looking at molecules, or very small things, they are objects of eye-sense consciousness rather than a hidden phenomenon like, that's extremely hidden phenomena I thought would be something like karma, which is an example that's always given.
Yeah.
But it's something like a molecule, which is an object of eye-sense consciousness. If there's no eye-sense consciousness perceiving it, it's not existing.
If there's no eye sense,
Well,
if there's no eye sense consciousness perceiving it, it's non-existing
at that time.
at that time. Okay.
So I mean that there's no mind observing; it's not an object of mind.
Okay.
But you're able to observe it using a microscope or whatever it is. But I don't see how it fits into that category of the third phenomenon.
Okay.
I still don't see that.
신도 교세디 데니게 탑시 메디비 갑라 안도 디디를 신도 고교 차기레스 탑시 유엔에 데니기 따바는 원줄 통과숨 통으로 그래 진짜 신도 고교세디 디 내가 될야 데니기 탑시 가면은 탑시 가면 통에 매를 원고숨네 통투고 말에 김천데네 토토비 진짜 디 신도 고교 차디 그래서 디로와 진짜 다디 탑시 자연데 탑시 질레에도 니네 주제 가서래 고교차되는 원주차로 걸어와 집어와 그냥 안 저기 대바실라는 다정한줄 고교래. 당아주 탑시 남 냠는지데 또 어디 되는 원숨도 원주차사래. 이거 탑실래도 고교 많이 봐. 다디 내가 불러 다정한줄 디왈하 여러벨라네 아주 고교래 동거 말. 제만 아주 원시 줍지 원시 단에 직통이도 원시 단 통투고네 그냥 원주 차사래. 대 탑실래요도. 제가 나대 두전 참모디 영한서 두스네. 디쪽서 원래 두전 가리어 디디와 두전 가리어서는 한서 시투 말아 돼. 이제도 두스 시마도디 아니 그 제네 파니네 아니 두스네 제도 미시거든 통도 원주 차서라. 제가 알리 두제 지금 말든 내 보고 나네 가리어라네 시투에 가고로 와. 그래서 뒤에 남나 신도고교 차르고 그래서 내가도 탑시 가야요 말아 예비 김천 가야셔요 말아 김천 삼단의 지도 하고 마투 아니 되네 신도고교 차르고 와 지는 탑시 제만 탑시 땅제 탑시 김천 제네 김천이야다 아니 그 지금 무슨 통도에 취실했던 통도에 내도 그 신도고교 많이 봐 차르고 와
중세 고교 이는 무슨 통 통화상 무슨 교육생 한다고 해요.
이것도
마음과 되는 것은 믹스어서 되는 무슨 통성.
이제 이리와 그 줌생 삼단이 여러 삼반에 그 중세 고기 원래 중세 고기 차대 또 근데 투식에 돈에 제만 무슨 돈에 문규 차송으로 봐. 근데 줌생나 되는 게 가야 매백값라 신도 고기를 한다.
What is the key point of what is being made, that was made earlier, and then I'll come back to the specific question about molecules. The key point that was being made earlier is that the classification of phenomena into manifest, slightly hidden, and extremely hidden is not is changeable, is variable. So what is hidden and slightly hidden and extremely hidden for us is not so for all beings, and will not always be for us either. Yeah? So what for us is extremely hidden or slightly hidden is manifest for others. Moreover, what currently is slightly and extremely hidden for ourselves as we develop qualities can become manifest or move from, or can become manifest. So that's the general point, right? The general point. So to answer the question then about the molecules, so there was a point of time when the concept of molecules hadn't been developed. Yeah? Then, like now for most of us, extremely hidden phenomenon, completely unknown. Then, intelligent scientists would have come up with a theory that would later turn out to be a correct theory, that phenomena are comprised of molecules. Then it's still a hidden phenomenon. Later, assuming thereafter the invention of the microscope came, that theory was proved to be correct, and molecules became manifestly known to those who have understood the theory and applied it through the use of the microscope. So therefore, assuming this all happened in one lifetime, something that was completely unknown, extremely hidden, became slightly hidden and later manifest. For ourselves, who have not, who have limited knowledge of and experience of the molecular structure of things, that may be still slightly, may be either extremely hidden or slightly hidden, depending if one has a good understanding of that theory or not. And it may even be manifest for some if they've then also engaged in using a microscope. Okay? So in this way, we see how the classification of phenomena are not static, it's not fixed. But through our own spiritual development, what is unknown and perhaps even unacceptable, we can become manifestly clear. Okay. Thank you very much.